become a filmmaker or something like that. So
That's good. Somebody needs to do that. It's important.
yeah,
Daniel, thank you so much for coming and sharing.
thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And finally, please join me in welcoming to the podium from the prestigious University of Western Ontario, Dr. Professor Justin Gilliland.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you all for coming. And thanks to the organizers for inviting me to the City Symposium to give you a bit of a snapshot on some of our research on how community design influences children's health issues. Now, as a professor of geography, I must begin with a map. This map shows obesity trends in Canada back in 1981. And what I want you to take from that map is, well, about 10 to 14% on average of Canadian kids were overweight or obese back then, with a few outliers there, like poor old Manitoba, over 15% of kids were obese. But that's not so bad. This is the map today. Every single province, on average, over 1 in 5 children are overweight or obese. And in fact, over a quarter of all Canadian children are currently overweight or obese, and that's quite similar in other developing countries, similar to US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, etc. So why am I talking about this? Well, obesity is linked to a lot of physical health problems, such as heart disease, diabetes, cancers, joint problems, as well as a lot of socio-psychological problems, mental health issues, and bullying, etc. And sad to say, London, depending on which study you look at, up to 2/5 or up to 38% of children in London Middlesex are currently overweight or obese. So this is a problem. Another critical pediatric health issue is injury. In fact, it's the leading cause of child death in the industrialized world. And at the Children's Hospital of Southwestern Ontario, we receive over 11,000 emergency department visits per year due to injury. Another problem, in fact, it's the most common chronic disease in childhood, is asthma. And that's actually the leading cause of school absences, not fake notes and things like that. But so why am I looking at all of these issues? Well, they're the most critical children's health issues. They're also problems that have been rapidly increasing over the past few decades. And this has led researchers to think that, what's going on here? There may not be some individual level factors. There may be some other reasons why. So some health researchers and planners have turned to the fact that the built environment may matter. You've all heard the expression, you are what you eat. Well, now we're starting to think you are where you live. So the environment that we live in can affect our lives in many ways. The quality of the air we breathe, our soil, the water we drink, our access to good places to play and get physical recreation, accessibility to healthy food and jobs, and as well as just playing good public spaces to gather and build social cohesion. As a social scientist, we'd call these opportunity structures, these factors in the environment that may promote damage or promote health or damage health directly or indirectly through the possibilities they provide for people to live healthy lives. So, what we've been doing is we've been doing some research, and I want to show you now some of the evidence that we've come up with. First is we want to link food environments to obesity. What do we know? Well, obesity is linked to a diet of high energy fast foods. Also, the high density of fast food outlets is linked to unhealthy diets, obesity and related diseases. Unfortunately, fast food outlets and supermarkets are more frequent, more prevalent in poor neighborhoods, but supermarkets are more scarce. Here's a map of junk food sites around children's environments. What I have here is all those black circles are schools, and they're sized according to how many junk food sites there are within a 5-minute walk, so within 500 meters. And then I've superimposed that on a map of median household income by neighborhood, so the orange being the poorest neighborhoods, the green being the richest neighborhoods. And what you see is the larger the circles have more junk food sites, and in fact, some schools have as many as 23 junk food sites within a 5-minute walk. And well, as you can tell from reading the map, those largest circles tend to be in the low-income neighborhoods. And it's not surprising that, in fact, proximity to junk food is also highly correlated with purchasing of junk food, consumption of junk food, and unhealthy diets. We've also been looking at active living in public recreation spaces. Now, active living, physical activity is the flip side to energy intake. Sadly, 2/3 of North American children are not physically active enough for optimal growth and development. Now, research in London and elsewhere has suggested that access to public parks and rec facilities is linked to increased physical activity and decreased obesity and other health issues, especially for children. But parks are typically of poor quality in low-income areas, and poor quality parks are rarely used. So we've done a lot of research talking to kids, and we've talked to parents, and we asked parents, why did you bring your kids to this particular park? So we've learned a lot. We've learned about factors about accessibility, so it's cheap and easy, shade, so I like this park, it has lots of big trees, as well as the design and quality of the facilities. So a lot of people talked about having splash pads or swings, and bathrooms being an issue. As that parent says, bathrooms are quite nasty. It's cleaner just to squat somewhere. Now, there are other ways to get physical activity. Active travel. Active travel being when you walk or bike or scooter, etc. And so we've been doing a lot of work at that because, you know, increased walking is linked to improved health. And walk to school is a really great way to get that walking in there. Sadly, again, active travel to school in the US has decreased from 42% in 1969 to only 16% of kids in 2001. And so a lot of new research is suggesting that the likelihood of walking or biking to school is influenced by community design. So we've done a lot of work in that area as well. In fact, a few years ago, we surveyed over 810 elementary school students in London across schools from all over the city. And we found, we were quite happy, 52% of children were taking an active travel mode to school, 48% walking. Sadly, when we asked them how they would prefer to get to school, over a third actually said they prefer to bike, skateboard, or rollerblade, but only 4% are actually doing so. So we did a whole bunch of fancy statistical analyses with geographic information system mapping, et cetera, to look at the significant factors of what really influenced whether they walked or biked. Obviously, distance between home and school was the #1 factor. The further the child lives, the less likely they are to walk. That's okay. And there are some factors. These green ones on the map or on the slide are those ones that contributed to, or positively contributed, like land use mix and intersection density, so like the directness of routes, and as well as density of street trees. And I like that one because it contributes to the quality of the walk, and I also like that because it's fairly easy to plant some trees. It's harder to add new intersections in a neighborhood. And a couple negative factors were the number of streets crossed, major streets crossed, and traffic volume. And these are factors that relate to safety. We've also been looking at injury. From our research with the Children's Hospital of Southwestern Ontario, we found out that actually 51% of severe pediatric injuries at the LHSC are due to motor vehicle collisions. A recent systematic review of all these before and after intervention studies indicated that traffic calming can decrease traffic injuries, and this was on average of 11%. So I like that finding that there is a built environment intervention that can be done. So we've also mapped this, and so we've looked at mapping risky spaces or hotspots for injury. So what you can read from this map is all those bright orange spaces are the ones where the motor vehicle collisions are most frequent. And you see those highly concentrated in the core and those major intersections. You can probably spot Wellington Road on there. And those little blue circles are schools, again, and we've sized them according to the number of severe pediatric injuries that were seen in the hospital. And what we find also is that children are injured more frequently in those motor vehicle collision hotspots. Pollution is another big deal, and air quality is linked to health. Several studies have shown that pollution and mortality rates are significantly higher in neighborhoods close to major roads and highways. So we started some work of our own in that area. With portable GPS and portable air pollution monitors, we tracked kids for a week in the spring and a week in the winter. And what we found out, we looked at PM 2.5, fine particulate matter air pollution, and we found out that on the spring journey to school, it was okay, but it was in that Environment Canada caution area. We also found out that pollution levels experienced by kids were lower in the winter, lower in suburban areas versus urban, and lower for walkers than drivers. So this was a good finding that has implications. And we've also looked at pollution around schools. Now that little red man there on that map is my PhD student Martin. I made him wait around in the parking lot near that 6-lane road. And I'm the little blue man in the park at the south. And as you can see, Martin was from the graph beside it, Martin was exposed to much higher levels of pollution than I was by the red line, but also he had spikes. And what those spikes were are vehicles coming into the parking lot, and the highest spikes were school buses. So again, that shows you the potential danger that we have by these vehicles. Luckily, they're only spikes and not continuous, and because the vehicles would leave or shut off their engines. So where do we go from here? I like to leave that on, if you can see the irony of that picture there with the sidewalk, you know. Where can a child go from there? Well, we need to create healthy food oases like farmers markets, and we need to limit junk food sites, particularly around schools. 23 junk food sites around a school is far too many. We need to build quality parks for all, not just children, all ages, all demographic groups, all socioeconomic status groups, ethnicities, etc. Because parks can build and encourage social cohesion, get everybody together. And a good park is one with green trees, etc. We need to rethink school siting and closing policies. We've got to stop closing inner city schools, which were highly walkable in these older neighborhoods. And here's an example of a school that's not walkable. Well, unless you live in that one farmhouse right across the street. That's in London. You may know where that is, out by the urban growth boundary. And let's put our roads on a diet. We need to design for safe, accessible, and active travel. And this is a good example of a case here on Queens Avenue where the Oldies Village Community Association got together with the city and they closed off one of the lanes of traffic, put a bike path in there, separated the sidewalk from the traffic with the parking. It's not perfect, but at least it's a good example of what can be done when citizens get together with politicians and engineers, etc. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you to our funders, and if you're watching, my kids appeared many of the slides throughout there. But thanks to the Heart and Stroke Foundation, Children's Health Foundation, and others there. Thank you.
Where and how are the things that you're researching and looking at meeting the real world? How are these things being applied?
Oh, well, no, that's an easy but a long-winded answer. We have a lot of collaborators. So a lot of this work that you've seen here, we work with the city planning department. And in fact, the head planner of the city right now, John Fleming, is a co-investigator on our most recent project. We work with the road department, so the engineers were very helpful with that motor vehicle collision thing. And we work with the trauma unit at the hospital, and so we feed in information there that they can use for their safety programming. So with the road safety committees, and we tell them where they can start targeting schools. And the Parks and Rec people want to know what they've used our information on trees and shade and splash pads to target tree planting efforts, and I could go on. So basically, in academia, often we write articles that are quite profound, and they get into journals, and then they sit on the shelf at the library, and we hope and pray that somebody will read it once in 10 years. And we're not all about that in my lab. My students and I, we really work hard at making sure that we're doing work that gets into the hands of the policymakers and the planners and the engineers and the school board officials, because that's what it's all about, making change, right?
That's really reassuring. I like that. It's good. Can I put you on the spot? Okay, you don't have to answer this question, I guess, if you don't want to, but if you were the mayor of London...
No, thank you. Not now, anyway.
What would be you could ignore the first part of that question if you want to. What would you say in our city, and you can be as specific as you want to or not, where would be the biggest points that you would change if you could snap your fingers and make that happen?
Wow. Do I have free reign of the budget, or?
Yeah, there's no recession. It's all good.
Well, with respect to, let's say with respect to children's health, for example, I think the walkability is a big issue. So, and with walkability, we've learned factors like trees contribute to whether a child walks to school or not, and the density of the neighborhood matters. So I'd be trying to enact policies which we can increase density in neighborhoods, increase walkability in terms of street trees, the quality of the environment. And it's not just about sidewalks, it's about how neighborhoods are designed and laid out for directness of routes, et cetera. So that would be a big one. Yeah.
Super. For mayor!
Bike paths? How about bike paths too?
How does London look in terms of these maps and graphs with bubbles and things highlighted and faded compared to, say, some of our neighboring municipalities and communities?
Well, London's probably the most studied city now, given all of our, but from what we know about the other cities, we're not too different than, let's say, the Windsors and the Waterloos, et cetera. One area that we're really good at, I think, I should praise the Parks and Rec Department. A lot of studies in the past have shown that poor neighborhoods have fewer parks, and I think, if you look at the map of parks in London, they are fairly well equally distributed in poor and wealthy and middle-class neighborhoods, et cetera. So we're maybe not behind others on that respect. So we're a very well-parked city. We might be a little bit further behind on things like infrastructure for active transportation, so like bike paths, and I'm sure the audience could probably say a lot of other areas that we're behind on. But a lot of these things come with density, right? So I think that's an issue. We can't compare ourselves to Toronto. We certainly can't compare ourselves to European cities. So, yeah.
I guess in closing, Jason woke up one day and thought, I'm really curious about children's health and the city we live in. What was your spark that got you just personally interested in pursuing this?
Well, normally, if I had longer for my presentation, you would have seen about 400 pictures of my children. So that was it. That was it. When they came into my life, they really inspired me, and they gave me a new lens through which to view the city. And I think I'm used to viewing, okay, I'm not that tall, but my kids are, they're seeing it at a slower pace. Have you ever walked with a 3-year-old? So I'm slowing down to look at the city through their eyes, and they're inspiration, but also making me look at different things. And I've come to realize that a lot of cities aren't designed with children in mind, let alone getting them involved in the process. So that was one of the things that we wanted to do, is start designing child-friendly cities, and part of that was getting kids involved. So even my kids are RAs, and they work for cheap. So,
Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming and sharing with us. If I could invite all the presenters, there's 3 more of you, to join me on stage for just a second. So if you came and were in the vicinity of the podium, you can come back for a second. We're really excited about this event series. We have 8 more gatherings in this very room, and excited to just discover what we're going to discover from people like this in our community who are thinking about things, doing things, and working on things. And just as a quick thank you, we'd like to give you official Forest City Symposium trees. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line at 519-660-7548 or email us with your comments.